No,
I can see webinar is now broadcasting to all attendees, but let's wait a few minutes to give everyone a chance to join.
sure, doctor. Doctor, I can see that your presentation here is a little bit blurry.
Oh, that's strange because I'm sitting
No, it's
next to
fine.
the
Yes.
router.
No, it's
It is? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
No, it's fine,
Perfect.
doctor.
All right. All right, everyone. I see that many of you are joining already. We are 100 participants. We're still waiting for the other 150. So let's give it a few minutes before we kick off with our second module, module 1B, Future School Leadership Models. All right, I can see that many of you are finding the chat. Use the chat, of course, for interaction with each other. And we are going to use our favorite tool menti.com again to stimulate the interaction between you in this workshop. So for those of you who don't know the tool yet, already you can go to www.menti.com. And I'll show you later on the screen as well. Let's give it 2 more minutes and give the other 130 participants a chance to join. Then we'll kick off. All right, everyone, welcome to our second session of the Future Schools 2030 workshops organized by Abu Dhabi University. I am going to do some things. Wait, let me help you. We are now 162 people in the session. This means that we are still waiting for the other 100. However, let's not wait any longer. Just reward those of you who are on time and get started. For those of you who missed the first sessions, my name is Dr. Anne van Ewijk. I work at Abu Dhabi University in the College of Business, and I'm from the Netherlands myself. My background is in public administration. I did a master in public management, then I did another master, public safety governance. And for my PhD, I did research on the strategic use of organizational diversity policies in the public sector. Now, after that, I said goodbye to academia and went to become a management consultant for KPMG. I did that for many years in strategy. I worked on change management, cultural change, team building, leadership development. And I am back in academia since 2015 when I joined Abu Dhabi University in Al Ain campus. After that, I moved to Dubai campus, so that's where I'm presenting from today, Dubai. Right, I teach entrepreneurship, innovation, organizational behavior, qualitative research methods, and also leadership and communication. So that's why I was invited to, I have the honor to be here today before you to offer you our second module. Now let me share my screen with you. Here we are. All right, so our second module is module 1B, Future Schools Leadership Models. Before we start though, I want to say that last time we had some participants asking for Arabic translations. Now we didn't have that by then, but now we have found a solution for that. So what we can do is you can install, you might have had an email about this already. What you can install is an app on your mobile phone. It's an application. And this application, it's called Microsoft Teams. You can see it also in the meeting chats, okay? A Microsoft Translator, sorry. Microsoft Translator, the logo is green. If you install that on your phone, and you type the code KCTWD, so it's a different code than what's in the chat. It's KCTWD. Then you'll be able to see the translations into Arabic. Okay, so here. So again, welcome everyone. For those of you who are just joining, I have my phone next to me offering translations directly into Arabic. You can see those translations into Arabic if you install Microsoft Translator on your mobile phone. It does not work, at least not for me on the desktop. It does work on your mobile phone. And then you introduce the code when you have Microsoft Translator installed. You introduce the code KCTWD, all right? It should also be in the meeting chat. We have support from our IT who for sure is typing this in the meeting chat. All right, so last module we did a kickoff. We had an opening from our provost to give you the welcome. Then we had Mr. Kennedy from ADEC delivering a beautiful opening speech. And we started working on scenarios and what kind of scenarios could there be for the future for education, and how can we then back translate that to our own professions and to schools as institutions in general. Now today we're going to talk about a different topic. Today we're going to talk about leadership and what type of leadership models or leadership principles or leadership styles are good for, or would be resilient and would be appropriate for the future that we're going to face. Although we, as I said before, have no idea what changes might be there. We can extrapolate trends, but we never know which trends might become dominant and how that is going to shape our worlds faster than we think. So today it's all about future school leadership models. Now, before we start, I want to, of course, working, here we go, present. Before we start, I want to check if our main means of communication tool is working, okay? Our main means of communication, because you are so many and I am only one, would be www.menti.com. You have to go to this website on your mobile phone. So you're going to use your mobile phone a lot today, both for Arabic translations and for the Menti tool. And you go to that website, use the code 296688 and 1 to enter and answer this question. It's more to test whether you're all here and whether the tool is working for you. Then we will go on. The question is, how relevant is the concept of leadership to your work? If you think, because we saw last time when we had our module 1A, we saw that we have school principals, people working in school management, in other positions in school management, teachers, we have student counselors, And we have people who did something else in education. Now, if you think of the concept of leadership, how relevant is that to your work? Is it not relevant at all? Is it a little relevant? Is it quite relevant? Or is it very relevant? So please type your answers. You can choose one answer. And I can see already that there's this inverted curve, okay? So we're going up. That means that most of you believe that leadership is very important for your position, or quite important, at least for your position. So if we talk about leadership, typically in an MBA, we would talk about leadership in general organizational business settings. However, if you look at leadership in the face of in education, we see that leadership takes on different faces and different shapes. So leadership is multi-faceted, which means multiple faces. Of course, the first things that you think about when you think leadership in education would be school principals. They are at the head of the school. They will lead others for sure. Of course, also governmental regulators, the ones who are doing the audits, the ones who are sending out the rules, the ones who are accrediting schools even to be able to have a license to operate. Heads of department, of course, we also see them in a leadership role because they are directing others. However, also teachers can benefit from these principles of leadership in their classrooms, but also in their professions and how they develop themselves and communicate with others in terms of their professional development, in terms of innovation, trying new things, and also in their relationship to students and parents. Counselors, same, they have relations with their students, they have this possibility to develop themselves within their fields and become leaders in their field, thought leaders perhaps. Parents can take leadership, can take charge, can take coordination roles. Think about the parent-teacher association that many schools will have. So parents are joining in with the teachers to provide direction or take strategic decisions about current processes and future procedures. And then we should not forget the students themselves, because as we have seen last module, when we talked about scenarios and how the future will look like in 20 years from now, we see that students are supposed to become these self-driven learners, these self-motivated learners. And with students, we are not only referring to people who are not of age, who have not yet become 18, but we also refer to people until they stop working, or maybe even after that. The concept of lifelong learning means that everyone can be a student at any point in time in his or her life. And that means that if you are in charge of your own development as a student, you also have to think about concepts related to leadership. All right. Oh, and last but not least, we are training students to create these new, or to develop and practice soft skills. And one of the soft skills that we would love our students to have is leadership, being in charge and inspiring people to work together. Now, this is the agenda for today, because I teach so much about leadership that it was very hard for me to make a choice in terms of concepts. Now, I've tried to limit it to this. First, we will look at transactional versus transformational leadership. And this is typically a leadership style that is related to motivation. Yes, leaders motivate others to work on, to realize actions that will then contribute to a greater good, to this collective goal that you have. Leaders motivate, but they can do it in many different ways. And two of the strategies that we will look at is transformational versus transactional. Then there will be a little reflection, because immediately I want to take those two concepts and I want you to apply them on your own work situation, whether you are a teacher, a counselor, a school principal, or something else, right? So we are going to share those reflections with each other. Then we'll look at the concept of servant leadership. Why? Well, first of all, it's trending. Everyone has heard of it. Let me just dive a bit deeper into it and explain again what it means. But we're going to do a self-test as well. And in that self-test, we will see that there is servant leadership and there's power-oriented leadership. And let's see what we have in the classroom. What are your preferred leadership styles? Then last but not least, we're not looking at a style, but we are going to look at a technique. And the technique is called strategic listening. For sure, this sounds familiar to many of you. Let's see if I can add something to that concept of strategic listening. See if we can reflect on it for ourselves. How good are we at it? What techniques, what additional tricks, tips and tricks could we learn to do this better? And to overcome the obstacles that prevent us from listening strategically, because there are many and they often prevent us from doing that exactly. Now, I was thinking first we have theory, then we have the exercise, theory, exercise. But for the last one, I actually prefer that we do the exercises first, and then we will do some reflection on what we learned through those exercises. And then hopefully we will still have time for questions and answers. Now, before I dive into it again, for those of you who are just joining, there is a tool if you prefer to hear this presentation in Arabic while you're here. You can install on your mobile phone the Microsoft Translator. Microsoft Translator has a green logo with a Chinese sign and then some recycling sign on it. Okay, so you don't choose the wrong one. You download it and you join the conversation with the code KCTWD. There you'll see that all the things I say in English are directly translated into Arabic, but also into German. If you prefer another language, Tagalog, German, whatever preferred language you have, you can introduce that and you'll see that automatically English will be translated into your preferred language. All right. This does mean that you have the phone, you'll be looking at the screen and the phone, that's fine. You need the phone anyway to use menti.com. All right. Great. Now, I know sometimes I go a bit fast, so I will try to make sure that I look at the meeting chats now and then, right? So now and then you'll see me, or the Q&A, sorry. So if you have questions, just type them in the Zoom in the Q&A function. If you have the questions there, then now and then I will look at them and come back to you. All right. Now, transformational leadership, let's start with that. And it's for sure a term that you've heard already, transformational leadership. It's been around for the last 20, 30 years, and it is a very popular leadership concept. Why? Well, because transformational leadership refers to something that is a transformation, a change. So transformational leaders, they motivate people, because like I said, this style is to get people to do something. Now, when you want to do that in a transformational way, you make sure that you appeal to the ideals and values of the ones you want to do something. Yeah, here we call them the constituents. You can also call them your employees, your students, your audience, whomever you want to take action. You appeal to their ideals and their values and link that to that vision that you really would like to see achieved. And that way, followers, employees, students are inspired to develop these new ways of thinking about problems. They become more responsible because they feel like that vision that you are illustrating for them is meaningful for them because it is related to their ideals and their values. Yeah, so they feel as if it is also their vision. Then typically workers, students, employees, you can see that we use different terms. They also become more positive because if you do meaningful work, and we've seen this in terms of Spritzer's definition of the psychological meaning of empowerment, one of the dimensions of Spritzer, it's a classic, it talks about the meaningfulness of work and how if it's more meaningful, you will be more motivated and you will feel more in charge of that work. So this more responsible and the positive mood, they are related. Now, transformational leadership, this is where it usually stops in popular literature, okay? Transformational leadership cannot be applied at any moment in time by any person towards any group of followers or employees or students. Okay, transformational leadership is contingent, and contingent, I think contingency, this is going to be one of the key words in our workshop. Contingent to what? Dependent on what? On the leader's personal characteristics and also his or her relationship with the group members, right? That will determine to a large degree whether the attempts of the leader to be transformational and to motivate the people are going to be more effective or not. So take a moment to reflect. My personality, my characteristics, my skills in terms of communication, presentation, but also my relationship to the people that I want to motivate. What is it like? Does it have a high quality? Do I still need to get to know people? Am I new here? Am I here? Have I been here for a long time? Is there a reputation that I've developed that I need to somehow shape or present in a different light? How capable would you be in terms of transformational leadership? And we're going to the next one. Transactional leadership. So, because you're thinking on the go, right? We're thinking on the go. We're not taking too long breaks. Transactional leadership. So transactional leader does something else. Still, this transactional leader wants to make people move, wants to make sure that people take action, and that, of course, those actions will be for the common good, right? However, a transactional leader focuses more on rewards, basically. And typically, standards will be outlined beforehand. Okay, so the transactional leader makes it very clear what are the standards, what are the expectations that the employer has or you as a leader have of the followers, of the students, of the employees, and then focus on rewards that will attract those people to actually start moving. Now, a reward can also include not punishing. It is not the most inspirational way of motivating people, but it is a way of motivating people. Okay. Now, very important here again, because transactional leadership over time has gotten kind of a bad reputation. All right. So overall, if you ask people, what do you prefer, transformational leadership or transactional leadership? You can see it from the face, and people will say, oh no, transactional leadership, no, this is very old-fashioned, or that's something that managers do, not leaders, right? Now, this distinction between managers and leaders is a very artificial one, of course, because usually who do we see as the leaders typically in organizations? Those who are occupying management positions or who are likely to go to occupy those management positions. So that distinction aside, typically people have this negative image of transactional leadership. However, it's just a style. Now, transactional leadership is also contingent. But to what is it contingent? Is it contingent to the character, like transformational leadership? No, it is not. Is it contingent to the relationship that you have as a leader to your audience, to the people, to the students? No, it is not. It is contingent only to the rewards that you can offer, because these have to be rewards that matter to the subordinates. So in this theory of transactional leadership is another theory coming from psychology in terms of motivation. And this motivational theory from psychology is called expectancy theory. So in expectancy theory, typically we have three, three main ingredients. I'll just try to explain it a very basic way, right? So we have the standards that you set with the behavior that you want. So there's the targets, yeah. Then we have, of course, the fact, do they believe that first of all, do they believe that they can achieve those targets? This is something that you have to really reflect on as a leader. Remember what we said last time, you always have to keep into account what are your goals, but also where are you coming from? And is it feasible? Is it realistic? Because if you ask people or students or employees to do the impossible in their eyes, it's not going to work. They won't even start to move. So it's very important as a transactional leader that you convince the people that they are capable of doing it. You can do it by praising them. You can do it by offering them training. You can do it by just showing it to them and letting them practice with it however you want, but you have to convince people that they are able to if they put the extra effort. That's number one. The second, you have to make sure as a leader that people believe that you will then offer the reward. Oftentimes, it's not even that they don't trust you. Maybe if they don't know you, they might not trust you, but also because they know how volatile the economic situation is and how quickly things can change in terms of, is there still any budget left for bonuses? Have you promised bonuses? So that's the second thing. Do people believe if they put in the extra effort, do they also believe that you in the end will be able to give them what you promise in terms of reward? And then the third one would be, are you offering something that they want? So you can ask people to do a lot of overtime to get that project finished. You can reward them with extra days off, but what they really want would be flexible work schedules. Okay, so transactional leadership is contingent to leaders' capacity to offer rewards that matter to subordinates. And you have to make sure that the employees or students believe that they can do it and that they trust in the fact that they will get the reward. All right, gamification is the same, by the way. Gamification had to introduce games into teaching. This is another popular concept. In the end, it works in the same way, because what happens in a game? You establish the rules, you establish that there is a reward, and if that reward is not worth it, the people, participants will not even start the game, or with much less enthusiasm, and will not learn as much from it. It's all transactional leadership. It's all based on expectancy theory. All right, enough. I can go on forever, but I don't want to. I want your opinion and your input as well. So I want you to reflect on, you see here two ways that are diverging. One says transactional, the other one says transformational. Now imagine you're here, but this is not a savanna or what you see in front of you. This is your workplace, all right? This is your day-to-day work. And I need you to reflect on that day-to-day work and think, for what, when or for what do you use transformational, and when or for what do you use transactional? So these styles, they're on the Menti. Now here we go again with the same questions, but now you can see the code again. For those of you who are just joining, go to www.menti.com and use the code 2966881 to give your answers. Now, when or for what do you use transactional leadership? Think about it. When do you reward your students, your employees, people that you want to influence? For what? To learn what? To do what? Okay, so what would you want them to do? So when do you use it and for what? What do you want these people, whether they are students, employees, or others that you want to influence, for what? What do you want them to do? Right? So do you want to teach, what do you want to teach them something? And then is transactional leadership a handy style of going about it? Now here, there are all kinds of answers popping up, but please do continue and just go. I can scroll. I think, like I said before, we are going to capture all of your input into Excel files and make a report out of it, and then share this with you at the end of the modules. This will be another hopefully added value aside from the classes themselves or the workshops themselves. So what we see is, well, transactional leadership, it's related to gamification, as I just explained. Also, well, for regular work. So that's very important. Transactional leadership is very convenient for routine procedures and nothing changes. But it's just to establish the standards and say, this is how it's done. When you do that, then you'll get this. Yeah? Or when you follow these guidelines, then you will be able to continue after your probation period. Yeah? When staff needs to complete a task. Now, small term goals, targets, great. When you need to see results almost immediately. Great. And coaching. All right. Coaching, Interesting one. Let's get into that later as well. When there's a specific target that I need met. Great. So let's go to the other one then. If transactional is for routine work, for specific targets, when you need the results quickly, where is transformational leadership then good for? This is apparently a style that we all must aspire to. This is apparently the style that is going to be the future. So why, when, or for what do you use transformational leadership? This means that you appeal to the ideals and the values of the ones that you're talking to. And you're trying to get their buy-in into that vision and make them feel like it's also their vision. And that the work that they do and the changes that you're asking them to do are going to contribute to something big and beautiful, even though it's challenging. And great, I see answers popping up. So where transactional was focusing more on short-term goals, transformational long-term goals. When change, when you are transactional, was focusing on the regular work, well, then transformational will be when you are going to redefine jobs. And remember, when we looked at these scenarios, some of the scenarios were so extreme that jobs definitely needed to be redefined or even disappeared. So you needed to define new jobs. Yeah. For the future, for long-term goals, unusual goals, and managing change. Yeah, perfect. That's great. So it seems here that you are very aware that we use transformational and transactional leadership and can do that at the same time. So if you are a good leader, or if you want to grow to be a good leader in your profession, in your class, in your school, in education, in the sector of education, it's very important that you know how to switch between the two styles and that you don't see it as a style that is yours and that's your character and that's just how you are, well, not born, but how you have gotten used to it. No, it should be two styles that you can switch between. So these two styles should be in the toolbox of any leader. Transformational and transactional. Okay, great. Thank you for your participation. Let's dive into servant leadership then. This is another very fashionable style of leadership. Servant leadership has also been around maybe even the same time as transformational leadership, popped up about 5-10 years later. Now, servant leadership refers to the fact that nowadays we do not prefer very old-fashioned leaders that are like generals and that are far ahead of the troops and risk even leaving the troops behind because they run so fast and they are so quick to understand everything and to work and to micromanage. Servant leadership is something else, right? So servant leadership, it doesn't refer to, for example, how a leader takes decisions. So servant leadership is not about, are you involving others or not in your decision-making? This would be, for example, decision-making styles. We have autocratic, we have consultative, we have delegation, we have facilitative. These are all different leadership decision-making styles. Servant lead, like transactional and transformational leadership, refer to motivating people. Servant leadership refers to where is the power and to what end are you using your power as a leader. Okay, servant leadership refers to what extent are you using your power to help others and even empower others in the process. So a servant leader works on the behalf of the followers, on behalf of the students, on behalf of the employees, to help them achieve their goals, not your own goals as a leader. Now, this is very different. It's kind of an inverted model of leadership, but it's something that resonates with all of us. Yeah, and this makes it one of the very popular styles or concepts of leadership. Now, it was originally introduced by Dr. Greenleaf, and in a public sector context. So, and he defined it as, well, leadership, it has to have in itself a commitment to service. A very typical example that are given from servant leaders would be like Mother Teresa or Muhammad Gandhi, yeah, like these big famous leaders. Now, if you look at it from an organizational perspective, or even from your classroom, even their servant leadership can have a meaning, right? But it becomes more practical, down to earth. And how are you then using your power? To what end? Is it towards your own end? Is it towards the ends and goals and visions of your constituents? Now, typically, how can we measure if a servant leader has been successful? Well, we will look at, do these group members, the people that you are supposedly leading, are they becoming wiser in an educational context? I may hope so. Are they becoming healthier? And are they becoming more autonomous? I'm sure this resonates with many of you. So we're going to do a self-test, and you have to be very honest here and control yourself and have self-discipline, because I cannot audit you. So you'll have to do it yourself. These are six statements that I took from a questionnaire made by Dr. Wong. There are many other questionnaires on servant leadership, but this is one of the ones that is used most often. I distilled from there, so I didn't take the whole questionnaire. That's about 56 questions. I distilled six statements that are related to servant leadership. So get ready for them. Okay, I'll repeat them. On the menti.com right now, you should be able to see these. Por favor, I wanted to say in Spanish, but please keep track of your own scores. So you can do it on your phone, although that's a bit tricky in the note page perhaps, or you can just write it down on your pen. If you don't have paper, use your hands. You can wash it off later. We're washing our hands all the time anyway. And keep track of your own scores, all right? Now let's go and see what you have to do then. You have to indicate on a scale from 1 to 7. So 1 would be, I strongly disagree with this statement. And 7 would be, I strongly agree with this statement. Now, to what degree do these statements apply to you? So you fill it in carefully. Yeah? So you can see, to be a leader, I should be front and center in every function in which I am involved. Okay, you don't agree with it, strongly disagree, or very much, or in the middle. I want to make sure, second statement, that everyone follows orders without questioning my authority. Second statement. Third statement, to be a strong leader, I need to have the power to do whatever I want without being questioned. Fourth statement, I prefer to have the final say on everything. For 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth statement, so there's 7. To be a strong leader, I need to keep all my subordinates under control. All right, oh, sorry, 1 is missing. And the last one, it is important that I am seen as superior to my subordinates in everything. So please, everyone, I'm going to leave it here because we need your input. Now we really need the input of many of you, if possible, the majority of you. I see that 16, 20 of you have now gone through the statements. Be honest, don't worry, there will be no individual scores. As you can see, there is an average score on the screen only. So just be very honest, open, think about how you are and what you really do in practice in your day-to-day. And fill in those statements. I see we have now 56. We are 200 in the session, so I'm expecting a bit more. And you will see, everyone who already filled in the statements, that the average is going left and right. So we can see only the group average and not the individual scores. But you have to please keep track of your own scores. So if you fill in a 4, just write down a 4. If you fill in a 2, write down a 2. If it's all 1, okay, that's easy. And think realistically. Think of your day-to-day. Think of how you are acting, not how you want to act. This is a problem with many questionnaires, that particularly if they are self-questionnaires, that people in the end present themselves in a very positive light. Not a very positive light, because research has shown that even when filling in questionnaires, people feel their conscious saying that they cannot lie too much, that they can display reality in a favorable light. Okay, there are tricks for that if you want to do research to try and prevent it. All right, I have now 100 responses. I'm going back to this question later. Now I have another test also for you. So immediately we're going to test number 2. Everyone who just jumped into the test and thought they were done by answering the statements, you are not done. I need you to fill in these ones as well. All right, so one by one, I will read the statements to you, not because you can't read, although the font type is a little bit small, but because it will be translated into Arabic directly through the Microsoft Translator for those of you who have joined there. Okay, so the first statement is, I am genuine and honest with people, even when such transparency is politically unwise. And that last part is very important. It's so easy to be genuine and honest with people, but when it's not smart to do so, many people, and we are social beings, feel inhibited to do so. Okay? Only some of us speak out anyway. I set an example, second statement, I set an example of placing group interests above self-interest. By setting an example, you are saying that you do this more than other people in your environment. Yeah, because you set an example. If everyone does it, you're not an example anymore, are you? So I set an example of placing group interests above self-interest. So more than people around you. Third statement, I always, and the key word is here always, so not sometimes, I always place team success above personal success. So if sometimes you don't, then you cannot go for 7, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth statement, when I help others, I do not expect any return. So when I help others, I do not expect any return. And I can do it 100 times without expecting anything from that person. And if I need something at some day, because this is what the statement implies, I need something back and the person does not give it to me, I will not be angry. That's what it means when you help others, not expecting anything in return. So even then, when you need something from that person you helped so many times before, and he or she is not giving it to you, then you will not be angry with that person. Okay. Fifth statement, I am willing to make personal sacrifices in helping others. So I will help others even if it's to my own detriment, even if it will disadvantage me somehow. I will still help others. It's a strong statement. So you sacrifice things from yourself to help others. And the last one, it's more about a feeling that is generated when you help others. I enjoy helping others. Doesn't matter how slow they are to understand things. It doesn't matter how much effort it costs to get them to learn something new. I enjoy helping others. Now I see that that statement is until now the one that scores the highest, and I'm very happy to see that. I was expecting it, but of course it's great to see that expectation confirmed, as we are in an educational setting where we are constantly helping each other, right? Okay, going back to that. Now, hopefully you have kept note of your own scores. I said it, I repeated it several times with an idea in mind. That's why it's also there in capital letters. Yeah, I hope you have kept notes of your own scores, because what you see on the screen is just the average from the 120 that responded. Okay, now let me go back to the first one. We can see here, okay. We can see in the first one that on average, all the scores 3.8, 2.5, 3.3, 3.2, they are lower than what we see here. 4.8, 4.7, 4.6, yeah, 6.5 even, okay? Now, typically what you would do when you do research, you'll have to downplay these scores a bit, because these were all positive statements, while the other ones were statements that generally people think of as undesired behavior, okay? Now, what does it mean then? Let's analyze these results, and you can analyze your own results, and we will not share your own results, so don't worry about it. Now, typically, if you see that the score on the first set is much, much bigger than the score on the second set, then you are a power-oriented leader. Power is very important for you, and you realize or you believe that having that power and keeping that power, only that will enable you to do the things that you need to do as a leader. And it doesn't mean that you're doing bad things as a leader. It can mean that you have great vision and that you honestly and sincerely want to help others, but by that you need to keep the power for yourself to make sure that you will have the influence that you need to achieve that. Power-oriented leader, power stays with you. If your score on the second set is much greater than your score on the first set, then you are very much a servant leader, putting the interests of others around you before your own interests and your own agenda and your own vision. Okay, now then there's a third category where they're more or less equal, because I really mean with that sign bigger than, I mean much bigger than. Okay, so it has to be much bigger than your power-oriented or servant leader. If the score is more or less the same, there's little variation, then it means you are, it does not mean that you are not one or the other, that you're in the middle, in between, not much outspoken and not authentic leader. It doesn't mean. It means that you are versatile. It means, let's see this in a positive light, it means that sometimes you will revert to a power-oriented strategy, and sometimes you will revert to being a servant leader. And here again, we must realize then that all the statements that were related to power-oriented leadership, we see them as undesirable. Well, if you look in practice, what is the most influential, what is needed, it depends. Sometimes it's very much needed to be a power-oriented leader. So the best style, again, is contingent to the context. And what is in that context? Well, the situation at hand. What is the problem? Who are the actors involved? What are their characteristics? What is my characteristics? What is my position towards them? What is the urgency of the problem? Here you can see that just like transactional and transformational leadership, power-oriented leader and servant leader should not exclude one another. Sometimes to be a good servant leader, you need to be very power-oriented, and the other way around. Yeah. Okay, so one of the, I realized, or I just heard that the reading materials that I had thought for you for these modules have just been uploaded on the website. All right, so if you go to the Abu Dhabi University website and Affinity Workshops and then Future School Workshops 2030, where you registered for, you can now see all the reading materials uploaded there. So you will see the report that we discussed last or 2 days ago with the scenarios, and you will also see an article written by Shone and Benuto in 2018, so it's fairly recent, and they did a study in the US looking at, so instructors, what kind of style would be better there, more power-oriented, more servant leader, and they saw that it was very much positively correlated to be, as an instructor, so as a teacher, to be a servant leader, particularly for online courses. So the fact that now teaching was done online, this is in a higher education setting, it was even more important that instructors would become more servant leaders in their behavior towards the students, more than before in the classroom. Now, I want to introduce another a critical caveat. Yeah? A caveat means actually, I object. Yeah? I don't object, but it's kind of like a critical thought from academia. And it talks about, it reinforces the point that I've been trying to make about how transformational leadership is not better than transactional leadership, how servant leadership is not necessarily better than power-oriented leadership. depending on the vision that the power-oriented leader has, right? And the word contingency. So a quote from Alveson and Ainola, which is from 2019, which is another paper that I uploaded for you as reading materials. And it talks about a warning about authentic leadership, but they say this applies to many other idealized and popular leadership concepts nowadays. They say, well, although the positive leadership recipes offer hope and inspiration in terms of idealized role models, yeah, in the midst of what is often a very messy and ambiguous practitioner daily work life, these role models or these positive leadership recipes are far from being anchored in solid theoretical foundations and not based on a thorough understanding of leader, follower, manager, subordinate relations and what it takes in practice, in real life, to get tasks done in various contexts of modern life. So they go on and they explain and they say, well, look, authentic leadership, for example, this is a very popular term too, like transformational, like servant leadership. Now, authentic leadership refers to you being yourself, not copying others. Yeah. However, in practice, you being yourself and emphasizing what makes you unique as a leader is not always a real option. Think of your position in the organization. If you are just becoming a team leader, or if you're at the top, you will have much different scope of freedom to choose how much you can express yourself without it having perhaps a negative impact on you as a leader. It can even be unwanted. Perhaps being authentic for you means that you do not keep your temper in check, right? And who is waiting for these constant emotional outbursts that you might have? It can be a career stopper. It can reinforce narcissism. With narcissism, you know that they refer to you being focused on yourself and on your development and believe that the world does not revolve around you, but that you have a very strong influence on that world around you. And it can only reinforce it, making it an even unrealistic image of how much influence you have on the people. So it can make you feel bad about certain leadership tasks as well. Imagine you are a servant leader and you have to talk with people about how their work was not up to standards for the last 3 years, and you have no other choice but to let them go. Now, if you then say you're an authentic leader and servant leadership style is ingrained in you and that's how you are, you will suffer much more from those conversations than when you have a more practical approach to leadership and you can switch between styles as needed. Of course, you can still feel empathy for these people, but you will not suffer yourself emotionally and perhaps even in your health because it creates stress, doing these leadership tasks that need to be done anyway because they are part of your function. Or they might lead to inflexibility, being authentic and always being yourself. So what does that mean? You cannot develop your character, you cannot develop in terms of styles, in terms of ways to communicate with people. Yeah. So I really like this paper. If you enjoy reading through academic papers, go take a look at it, but either way, go and read the abstract. It's a very interesting point that these authors are making. Again, the best style is contingent to your characteristics as a leader, the characteristics of the people that you want to get moving, and the context, the situation at hand. What is the issue? What is the problem, if anything, or what standards need to be achieved? So here's our toolbox again. We have to add transformational and transactional, as well as servant and power-oriented. So don't see power-oriented as something that is negative, that is always going to have a bad impact. Sometimes it's very much needed. And sometimes you need leaders that are more power-oriented to manage certain crises, for example. All right, now we're going to add a third well, or fifth aspect to our toolbox for strategic, for being a good leader, okay? And that is strategic listening. Now, strategic listening, I don't want to tell you what it is because I'm sure you already have an idea of what strategic listening is. If I call it active listening, perhaps that will make it entirely clear for you. Now, before I dive into it again, what it is and what is preventing us from doing so, I want to do some exercises with you, all right? Now, this is a video that I'm going to show you from Mr. Tom Peters. Oh, and I'm just realizing, talking about strategic listening, I didn't look at the Q&A. So let me take a look. I'm going to go leave here and take a look at the Q&A here. I see I have 4 questions, 12 are answered, so they must have been practical. 4 ones that I haven't seen. All right. Ashraf is asking, so can I use this test model in my work outside of this training? So Ashraf, I think you refer to these statements that we just did in terms of servant leadership and power-oriented leadership. And yes, for sure, you can use it outside of work as well. If you want, the slides will be shared with all of you after we are done with this workshop. In the slides, there is a link to the original questionnaire. So you can click on that link and you will get the original questionnaire. And just let me know if you can't find it. It will be a link in the slides that will be shared with you. Okay. Then, in my own opinion, it's always dangerous. Should our circumstances and scenarios lead our leadership style? That's a very good question. Particularly because I just told you how authentic leadership can sometimes be undesirable. And authentic leadership refers then to you having your own style that you apply to all situations, right? Now, so Raihana, thank you very much for that question. I'm going to answer it now. I believe, and many researchers agree with me, that the circumstances and the scenarios will determine whether the applied leadership style is more or less effective. So, of course, as leaders, we have our personal preferences. We are humans, and humans consist of a lot of percent of habits, and also habits in terms of how we exercise leadership. However, you will see that the leaders who are more adaptable and more versatile, that means they can change according to what the situation requires, they are the ones who will be most successful. So in a yes or no, because it's a yes or no question, I would say yes. Then I have another question. Mohammed, thank you for that one. Transformational leadership, is it the same as situational leadership? No, it's not. Actually, when I talk about contingency and how important it is, like I answered Raihana's question, to adapt your style to the situation, that is situational leadership, okay? Transformational leadership, it refers to how you motivate people. And it refers to you motivate people towards, by appealing to their ideals and values, and by making them feel co-owners of that objective that you have in mind. Transformational leadership in that way might be not appropriate at all when it concerns routine tasks, jobs that need to be done very quickly, and jobs that do not require any change. And you need to see the results fast, all right? And maybe not that big of things. So transformational leadership is not the same as situational leadership. Now, let's go down. All right. So someone is typing about the individual report regarding the involvement in the sessions. I don't think we have an individual report. We will have an assignment for all of you that you will need to complete by before the end of the course so that you can get your certificate. But I'm going to talk about that at the end of our session, if that's all right with you. And Asma, you are correct. Leadership style, which one is effective or more effective depends on the context one is in. Now, Mace is saying, what is the best way to implement what you have proposed? So what I proposed was that you adapt your leadership style to the situation that you are in. The best way to do that is to practice and reflect after. So if you have time at the end of the day and you think of some moments during that day where you had to take a decision or where you had to impose your authority or where you were negotiating with students to get something done. This happens to me too when I'm teaching in higher education. Students love to negotiate. So you reflect on how you handled the situation, what was the way you were imposing your leadership, and what were the results thereof, right? So practicing and reflection is the only way to keep improving and to hopefully become a more versatile leader. Also, if you know that something is coming up, for example, a meeting, you can prepare yourself and say, this time I want to practice being a more servant leader, or this time I want to practice being a more, and you can ask the feedback later of the participants, how they felt that going. Then, of course, there's also coaching, and there are trainings. There are trainings for everything, even for how you speak and how you hold your position, but also in terms of how you formulate your requests to others. Then Angelo is saying, will you agree that leadership is more of a response to a situation than a character? Yes, I think I agree because of the word more. Okay, so it's not only a response to a situation. There is, of course, we cannot deny that we have our own personalities. We cannot deny that we are more comfortable acting one way than another. So that's when I said that you always have to be realistic when you have your goals, even if these are personal development goals in terms of leadership styles. Who are you? What are you capable of doing? Where do you feel comfortable with? What do you not feel comfortable with, but you would still be willing to try? Don't take too big a step so that you feel like you are just acting. Okay, so it is our character, but we're trying to mold that character into an appropriate leadership style. I hope, Angela, that answered your question. Karaman is saying, so can we use servant leadership in a special day, such as National Day? Yes, and you can also use power-oriented leadership, and you can also use transformational leadership, and you can even use transactional leadership. It depends on what you want to happen and what you want people to do on National Day. All right. Shagufta is saying, thank you for your question. Good evening, doctor. Don't you think it's a bit tough to unite people to aim at the same mission and vision, considering the current global pandemic and its effect worldwide and how it's so demoralizing on everyone? So in terms of the pandemic, I would say that this is typically a matter of leadership in times of crisis. There's crisis in all types of organizations. There was crisis in education when suddenly we had to move towards a model of online teaching, which in some countries was hardly an option or not an option at all. So there was crisis in healthcare, obviously, and there's also crisis in retail, in hotels, restaurants, because of the lack of people traveling. There is actually there was crisis in online retail as well, on e-commerce, because it was going unexpectedly good and logistic change had to be reinforced so quickly and so rapidly, it created stress. So in all kinds of sectors, this pandemic has made people become stressed, worried with all the health consequences of that outside from Corona. So I would never say that there is one mission or one vision that would unite us all, although I do think that in the end we all want economies that work, we all want educational sectors that are effective, we all want the same beautiful big goals. But this is where we have international institutions for to try and create agreement and power and policy between countries. Let's just, Shagufta, let's keep it at a more operational level now, because big change starts with small steps. And big change will not be achieved if we don't all contribute our own 2 cents. Many drops fill the bucket, and I can go on and on with these type of quotes. So we must look at ourselves, what is our scope of influence, and what types of leaders do we believe we need to be towards the people that we interact with. I hope that answered your question. Alia says, is corporate psychology important in terms of creating leaders? I would say that we can learn a lot from psychology. And typically where we translate the more deep insights from psychology into organizational settings would be in business courses like organizational behavior. It's very heavily embedded in psychology, but translated to a very operational level. So that's definitely helpful. And there are many sources, you know them, from free education. We have free LinkedIn Learning. I think you have to register on YouTube, lots of blogs and vlogs that you can learn from too. You don't have to register for a formal degree to learn about it. Safa says, what is the best one for beginner leaders? Well, you have to elaborate on that, Safa, because I don't know what you mean with the best one. The best one what? Then I see someone anonymous. How do we lead when we are caught in the middle with power administration versus tired staff? You lead as you can. So the answer is you lead as you can. Make sure that you don't fall over in the process. Take care of yourself and then take care of the people around you. It's the only way that we can handle this. Okay. So Dr. Beno is, and thank you for joining us, is asking, so if we are looking now at a multicultural environment, and I'm very happy you asked this question, which leadership style is effective? So there has been a lot of research on cultural differences between, mostly on national cultural differences in terms of leadership. And we talk now about, for example, the globe leadership dimensions, or we can talk about the Hofstede dimensions of cultural differences, right? Hofstede with an F, and globe, you can Google that. Now, these dimensions, they say that, for example, in one culture, there will be a higher power hierarchy than in others. So in one culture, people are used to leaders being far away, being more difficult to reach and very clearly powerful. So there's a lot of symbolism in those cultures in terms of distinguishing between ranks, as I can say. So in those type of cultures, the leadership prototype or role model might be different than in other cultures. Now, the danger of looking at cultural environments, there you have to, because when you come in a different cultural environment, you'll have to see how leadership is exercised there. You can, of course, be authentic and bring your own leadership style, but you have to do it in a way that you can get the employees or the students to go with you. For example, personal example. First, I was used to teaching at a Catalan police academy. All right, so this is in Spain at the police academy, and I was teaching criminology. Now, these students, as you can expect, they are very different, hyper disciplined. They would be there 5 minutes before class starts, all of them, and they would all stand up as one and salute me when I came into the classroom. Now, responding to that, it's very different than in the Netherlands when you walk into a classroom and you say, "Hi, guys," to everyone. And they actually address you, maybe not even with doctor, they might even address you, the students, with your first name on a first name basis. Then I moved to Al Ain, and I was teaching in Al Ain, and I was expecting students to be as informal as in the Netherlands. Well, not expecting, but I didn't realize that in my first class. So what I quickly found is that students are used to treating with instructors in a different way. And you have to adapt at least a bit to that to be seen as an effective leader or as an effective instructor. in this setting. Yes, you have your own style. Yes, you have your own preference and things, habits that you really don't want to change because they feel better for you and believe they are useful for the ones that you are trying to teach. But you must keep in mind who is there and that they don't know you when you just start. All right, so so Abbas says it's best to be situational leadership. Yes, correct. That is the main point. I'm going back within 2 minutes back to our presentation because I really want you to see also about strategic listening. I'm just going to take a few more. Asma says, so people say practice becoming a leader. Now, what about the individuals who have certain natural leadership qualities? How would they adjust in adopting something that they never had? I mean, won't they be able to come up with specific leadership expectations at a certain area? Yes, you're right. And in that sense, what we see as one of the most valued leadership characteristics nowadays by training institutes and by employers all over the world is adaptability. Are you, as a leader, able to see what is around you and perceive all those inputs in such a way that you are able to adjust your own leadership style correctly towards that? So versatility, adaptability are now key characteristics of being a successful leader, and there's not one style that's going to take you there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. I know there are more questions, but don't worry. We'll get back to that because now I want us to look also at strategic listening. I don't want to skip that. So here we are, and this is Tom Peters. Tom Peters is, aside from a consultant, also an author on business management practices. He also wrote the book In Search of Excellence. Now, I'm not going to introduce him anymore. I'm going to show you the video. And the question that I want you to think about, again, very honestly towards yourself is, have you felt at one or more occasions, have you felt the temptation of the 18 seconds? Now you will know what I talk about when you watch this video. So let's take a look.
A Harvard med school doc by the name of Jerome Groopman wrote a lovely book called How Doctors Think. And he begins by saying, when you are engaging a patient, what is the number one source of evidence about that patient's problem? And he answers the obvious answer, the patient. The patient won't use the right technical language. The signal to noise ratio won't be all that high, but in the course of a 5 or 10 or 15-minute discussion, you will pull out an incredible number of pearls. Okay, best source of information about a patient's ailment is the patient, comma. At that point, Groopman refers us or leads us to a research study that asks and then answers the following question. But I'm going to halt for 3 seconds in here while you think of what your answer is. How long is it before the doctor addresses you, sits down with you? How long is it before the doctor, on average, interrupts? And if you said 18 seconds, you got it exactly right. 18 seconds, and the doctor has interrupted with his opinion. Now, am I doing this little piece for you to trash doctors? Absolutely not. I'm doing this little piece to trash you. Among the bosses who are watching this, among any of us who are watching this, who are experts or professionals or what have you, I bet you that among the boss audience watching this, that 7 out of 8 are 18-second bosses. That is, it is so, oh my God, I've seen this before. This is what you should do before you even express what the problem is. So here's the segue. I have come to the conclusion, and you may argue that this is overstated, but I don't care whether you argue that or not. I believe it. The single most significant strategic strength that an organization can have is not a good strategic plan, but a commitment to strategic listening on the part of every member of the organization. Strategic listening to frontline employees, strategic listening to vendors, to customers. But because you see, I mean, I really hate MBA programs, but someday I'm going to have my own MBA program. And the number one core course in Tom's MBA program is going to be a 2-part, half-year each course called Strategic Listening 1 and Strategic Listening 2. The reality is you can teach listening, you can get better at listening. There's no issue about that, but guess what? It's like playing the piano, it's like becoming an actor, it's like learning to be an artist. It is a profession that has to be learned. And it is my opinion as a leader or as a team member that to a significant degree, your profession is listening. So think about it. Are you an 18-second manager? Bet you are.
All right. It's a bit provocative, but that, of course, was the point. Now, let's get back to our mentee, www.mentee.com, and use the codes. And I want your honest reflection. Have you ever felt the temptation of the 18 seconds? Someone started talking to you about problems that they had, or issues, or worries, or anything negative. And after 18 seconds, maybe it was 17, maybe it was 20, you interrupted to offer your help, to offer your advice, or to share the perspective that you have of that same situation. And there we are. Of course, it would almost not be human to not have felt this temptation of the 18 seconds at one point in your life. I'm not saying that, oh, wait here. Hello, everyone. So I just turned on the translator again because I turned it off for the video. So sorry, apologies for everyone who just joined, but now it's working again. Now, it would be very unrealistic or to say that you have never felt the temptation of the 18 seconds. Feeling the temptation doesn't mean that you continue with it, that you follow up with it with behavior, but it's very human to do this, very human. And that's why I'm not surprised that the majority of you answers yes to this question. Okay, now there's the second exercise I would want you to do. We still have time, so I'm very happy. We're good on schedule. Now, this is an observation exercise. As many of you have felt the temptation, I'm hoping, of course, that you also all know the importance now of strategic listening, of active listening. And I'm going to show you a scenario. So it's an acted out scenario in the classroom. We would do this with 2 students acting. And here I'm going to show you a scenario of team leader, Rebecca, with one of the people that works in her sales team. And that person is Matt. So that's the gentleman who is also going to have a coffee, I believe. They are in the canteen. This is pre-corona. You will see that it's from quite a long time ago, so apologies for that. But it's a very good video that shows how you act differently if you apply this technique of active listening. What I want you to do is write down or take notes on your mobile phone, or write it down very old-fashioned with a pen and a paper. Take note of what different techniques of strategic listening do you recognize, because it's not one thing that she does different. There are many things that she does that help to solve the situation in a better way through strategic listening. All right, so I'm going to start the video, and just don't only look at it. If you see something, write it down directly, and then we will share it with each other.
Listen.
Oh, nothing you want to hear about.
Not having a good day, huh?
Yeah. You know that licensing deal I've been working with, that San Diego company? I was super gung-ho about it. Thought it was going to be a good opportunity, but now I'm just not so sure.
Oh, well, you know, it's just one of those... Oh, okay, hold on, Rebecca. You can do better than that. Remember the window, okay? He's the one with the problem right now, so So you were feeling really excited about it, and now you're having second thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've done tons of these deals, and sometimes it takes a week, maybe a couple weeks, a month at the most, but this is just ridiculous.
So you're not used to having negotiations drag on like this?
Yeah. We were pretty close to signing a deal a couple times, and then they'd ask for another concession, and then we met them more than halfway. But then I get an email this morning, and they want to push back the signing until, I don't know, the end of the year.
Well,
Kidding me?
Yeah, it sounds like you've given them as much as you can, and now this is just too much to ask.
Yeah. I got a friend who works in the area too, and he said he's surprised that it's taken this long. Plus, he said there's other companies who'd be interested in our product, so.
So you got another perspective.
Yeah, I think I've just been too focused in on trying to make this happen, and that I just lost sight of the big picture. So what I need to do is just develop more leads in the area.
Well, it sounds like you're feeling ready to move on.
Yeah, I think I am. Hey, thanks for the help.
You're welcome, and keep me posted, okay?
Yeah, will do.
Active listening.
All right, so that was our video with Rebecca and Matt, and she was applying the strategies of strategic listening. So what I want you to share with us is all those notes that I hope you've taken or that you have remembered from the video. What different things is she doing that is all related to strategic listening? Of course, it's waiting for longer than 18 seconds before giving your opinion. But what else is she doing? I see already one person who was just waiting for the Menti to open and share the answers. Everyone else, please go ahead and you can give multiple answers. So you can type one per time if you want. So I see, for example, listening and asking for details. Yeah, repeating his thought. So she is repeating what he reflects, just objectively without any judgment and not suggesting anything. Great. She also waited for pauses. She was probing a bit, confirming. So that's the repetition of the thought, turning and looking at him. All right. She was also questioning while showing interest. So you could also see it in her nonverbal behavior. She waited. She encouraged him to talk. She restated again or repeated the problem that she thought he had. She was definitely using less words than he was. And she turned and looked at him. So when you show interest, it means that your whole body is directed towards that person. Your feet, for example, are not already halfway out the hole. So these are all great answers. And I see that 93 of you have answered, but like I said, we can't go into all of them at the same time. All of your answers, they will be captured in an Excel file, and we are going to summarize that in reports and get back to you later. However, it shows me that you have a great idea of what strategic listening is. It's also called effective listening, active listening. You heard about that already. It's actually very common in your profession, in your sector. Now, things that you do, paraphrasing, this is the repetition of what the other said that you were talking about. The nonverbal behavior that show interest, eye contact, open posture, positive gestures, encouragement, like you said, it's all there. Open questions, so not yes or no, or perhaps an open question that actually invites a longer answer. And follow-up questions to dig into more details. And in the end, you saw that Matt solved his own problem. And he was still with that feeling, but while talking about it in the 2-3 minutes that they had, because the video was really not much longer, the problem was solved. His feeling was good, and he had this new approach that he was going to go for. And he didn't feel bad about not signing the deal with that one party anymore. Now, this is the trick, ladies and gentlemen. We know what strategic listening is, or active or effective listening. We even know the techniques on how to do it. However, we don't always do it, because in real life, there are many things that prevent us from applying these techniques and make us respond in ways intuitively or rapidly that are not in line with the techniques of strategic listening. Now, what are obstacles that prevent us from being strategic listeners all the time? Well, number one reason why we don't listen all the time is because we feel that we lack time, or we truly lack time. There's just no time to be strategically listening to everyone all the time, particularly when there are times of crisis and things have to be decided quickly. However, of course, we've also know that it's very important that you do make the time, perhaps not the entire week, but make sure that in that week of chaos and stress, you have some moments to just sit next to someone and ask them how they're doing on any type of level, on any, if they are peers, if they are people working for you, or people that are just in your environment. Yeah. Now, the second reason why we don't listen strategically or don't listen well at all is because of distractions. We live in a world where there are distractions constantly. Even when we're working, there will be distractions. We have the phones, the mobile phones, the internet. We are now at work, at least I am, on the Microsoft Teams, where people and students can reach you constantly, unless you turn it off, of course. And there is news all the time. There are social media. And then look at our workplaces that can be very distracting. So working from home for some can be very distracting. Now, all of that, it creates a kind of a cognitive overload. So a cognitive overload refers to when you're already busy and there are more things piling up. Now, cognitive overload would then definitely prevent you from taking time, breathing, and listening and absorbing. Another reason, and this is a biological reason that will not change, we can't do anything about it in terms of distractions. We can say, I'll turn the Microsoft Teams off, but in terms of this aspect, we can't do much, that there is a speed difference between speaking and listening. So in terms of speaking, depending on how slow or how fast you talk, you can pronounce about 110, it says, to 200 words, right? In some languages, you can even say more words if they are shorter. So the speaking speed is that. However, listening and absorbing and understanding information, listening, it's about between 400 to even 3,000 words per minute, depending on how well practiced you are. Okay. Now that also means that while you're listening to someone, you have time left. You actually have time left to think about other things. You're still hearing the words, but it's easy to get distracted because you have space left to think about other things. And that then leads also to being more susceptible for distractions. And then, of course, there's also, maybe you have the time, maybe there are not that many distractions. You're perfectly capable of hearing what that other person is saying, but there are just other priorities. Now, it's always going to be a balance then. Again, strategic listening or active listening, it's not the one-size-fits-all recipe for success. You need to make sure that you do it at the right times, though. And even in context where it's very difficult to make the time, you'll have to find a way. Technology can even help you in this, in terms of being able to capture input from multiple people at the same time. But the face-to-face and the personal context, typically, even if you have a conversation as a school principal with a receptionist only twice per year, it can create lots of insights that then can even lead to input for your new strategic plan for the school. Okay. And this is what they also call doing management by walking the rounds. So make sure that you are in touch with the people on the work floor of different departments, of different professions, all working in the same sector. If you work for the government in education, making sure that you spend a lot of time also on school, or regularly, perhaps only once every half year, again, in the form of not auditing, all right? Because you know that people behave somewhat different when they think they are being audited. So make sure you have your ear to the work floor, and it's worth it. Why is that worth it? Why is it worth to make time in your busy schedules to listen strategically, because one, it will help you immensely in making better decisions. You'll get more information, more details, things that you thought were similar to another situation turn out to be slightly different in a very important way after all, if you get more information. So decision making will be improved. Then, of course, if people feel like you are hearing them, so not only listening, but really hearing and listening and doing things with what they say, they will feel more loyal to you. So this really improves, if you talk about leadership and the members, the leader-member quality of relations. Now, there is a theory about that as well. It's called LMX, Leader-Member Exchange Theory. Google it, look it up. We don't have time to go into it, but it really talks about how when the quality of the LMX mean is high, the quality of your relation with your students, followers, people, whoever these people are that you want to do something is better. It will cost you less time to get them moving. You will need less instructions to get them to do the right thing, etc., etc. And this loyalty therefore becomes very important, not only because it makes people feel better, which is already very important, but also because it will make you a more effective leader. Then the third one, if you listen strategically, and like you saw in the example with Rebecca and Matt, you kind of get into this dynamic where people almost solve their own problems with a slight nudge here and there, instead of you being the 18-second boss, providing them with your experienced advice. Imagine that your employees or students or constantly are coming to you, you give the advice, what will happen? They will come to you even more because you're not teaching them to become self-reliant. And in the end, that's what you want from your students, from your employees, from people working in education, that everyone becomes more self-reliant in terms of their own learning, but also in terms of their own professional development and solving any issues that there might be, because that then frees you as a leader up to do more things and better things and redesign processes and think about change and innovation and all those things that we think we need for the future to be resilient. All right, that's it. Luckily, it's 6:30, so we don't really have much time for questions, but I'm going to the questions anyway, and I'm sorry for finishing just on that mark. So everyone who's here, if you want, if you have urgent obligations, you can leave the session if you want. Otherwise, you can stay here and listen to me answering some of the questions. However, before you leave, one practical announcement is that you will get an email in the email that you use to register yourself with. All right, you will have an email from us with a link to a form with a series of questions. Now, someone asked about how is our involvement going to be measured? Well, through that form. So you have to fill in that form. Don't do it rapidly. Take your time, read the questions, mull about it in your head for a few days, and then fill out, give us your insights, your input, your ideas. The deadline for the form, I believe it's December 24. Should be indicated in the email. Why? Because all those insights that you are typing there, all the learnings and insights and examples of best practices that you are going to share there, they will be combined in our last sessions. All right. So you will see there that hopefully all the input that you have been providing is there then culminating into some main collective insights. So fill in those questions, but take the time and be elaborate, because the more elaborate, the more learning, the better our collective insights will be. And that's necessary to get your certificate of for this course. Yeah, I'm calling it a course. It's a series of workshops, basically. All right. So do take a look at your email. Everyone that has urgent obligations can leave. I am just going to go to our to our Q&A, because I see we have a lot more. And I apologize beforehand that I won't be able to answer all your questions. I'm going to dedicate about 10 minutes and just scroll through your questions. If there's anything urgent or that you'd like to spar about, just send me an email. My email is Anne, so that's my first name, Anne, and then Ewijk, so only the first and the last part of my name, anne.ewijk@adu.ac.ae. I'll type it in the meeting chat. Let's see, where's the chat? So my email address is now in the chat, and let's answer some questions. All right, so questions are, I'm going to go to, if you don't mind, I will go to the questions about strategic listening. All right. Oh, and I see that we also have a lot of interesting comments. All right. Oh, and I see here a book that I read, a comment from Ugo Chukwu. Sorry for the pronunciations. Ugo Chukwu is saying that, well, a book that I read that helped me a lot with active listening is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg. So thank you very much, Ugo Chukwu, for that suggestion. I'm definitely going to Google this myself. So another question from anonymous question is, do exceptionally intelligent people find strategic listening even more difficult? I think that if these people believe that they are exceptionally intelligent, definitely they will find it more difficult. So if they are aware that their intellect is higher than the average, they might be less inclined to listen to others. However, if you are smart, so if you are intelligent, and particularly if you're exceptionally intelligent, you will also understand that there is limits to knowledge, that all knowledge we have is limited. And that also means that your own knowledge as an exceptionally intelligent person is limited, and that the best information about a problem you can get is from talking to people who have that problem. Now, they might, of course, be more inclined to give quick answers. All right. I see a thank you. Well, Rahat and everyone else, you are welcome. I see Vidya who's saying, I couldn't attend yesterday's session due to network issues. How can I make up? Vidya, there is a recording from the first class from the first module 1A. I got the YouTube link. Probably you can go to the ADU website, then go to the Future Schools 2030 workshops, and there should be a link there. If you can't find it, just reach out, all right? Asma is asking also, can a good listener be a strategic listener? Yes, so depends on what you define as good listening. If it means that you are very good listening, but you are not acknowledging anything that you hear, you are not encouraging the other to dig into details about the problem or possible solutions that he or she is suggesting himself. If you are not good in doing follow-up questions, then you can listen very well and recall everything the person said, and still you are not a strategic listener. Because strategic listening is like active listening. It implies that you are actively steering the conversation without imposing your own ideas and strategy. But you are doing something actively, not only passively. All right. So Ahmed is asking for the email address. So that's a very easy question to answer. Okay, so Karaman, and that will be then the last question that we discuss, says, look, we can connect these concepts. I'm going a bit further with your question, Karaman. And think of listening and think of servant leadership. So perhaps a servant leader would be a better listener than, let's look at the opposite, a power-oriented leader. It could be It could not be, because even power-oriented leaders know that they need information to take better decisions. And power-oriented leaders also love it when people are loyal to them. And if they believe that being a good strategic listener or an effective listener is going to help them with that, why shouldn't they apply a technique? So listening and effective or strategic listening is really a technique that anyone can apply, regardless of the style or idea that you have in terms of motivation, transactional or transformational, and regardless of the ideas that you have about the importance of power and keeping power or giving power away. Okay, so it's a strategy, it's a style that anyone can use. Okay. Then Batul, okay, sorry, this is the last one because I like that question a lot. Thank you, Batul. How can you as a leader react to people who don't have listening skills? That's great. I would love to hear your answers. Maybe it can come back in the form that you all will have to fill out. Typically, if you are a leader that wishes that the group would become more capable of applying these principles of strategic listening, is either transactional leadership, where you say these are now the standards and you have to apply them. Typically, though, is transformational leadership. So you start identifying what are their values and their ideas, and you start explaining to them how strategic listening is going to help them to achieve these ideals and values and how it will fit their values and how it's going to help them to achieve their ideals. That might help. Or as a power-oriented leader, you can force them. It's not very easy to force a habit or force a skill, though. You can make them do a training and say that it's mandatory. See, so there are different ways of approaching that. Okay, I'm sorry for all the other questions, but we don't have time. We're already 10 minutes over time. So I'm going to here stop sharing, and I'm going to just reiterate that you have all received an email in your inbox, the email address that you use to register for this course, for this series of workshops. So what you need to do is look at these statements, think about it carefully, write elaborate answers, and then fill that in before December 24th. So that will be the way that we will look at your involvement, your participation. All right. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your engagement, which was very visible, looking at the mentee and seeing how many of you were actively replying. I hope people were satisfied with the new thing that we tried with the Microsoft Translator. I saw that somehow 10 minutes, the Microsoft Translator session was automatically closed. I don't know why, but luckily we had already reached the end of our session. So we're going to keep using that for the upcoming modules. Next week, it will be Dr. Petra Turkama, who is going to join us and guide you through the sessions. And she's going to focus on innovation, entrepreneurship, but mostly innovation and an innovative culture, and how you can stimulate that, how you can assess it, and then how you can stimulate that within your own organization. So for sure, you will enjoy that one too. Have a great evening, everyone, and we will see you next week on Monday, 5 o'clock.